So we're starting a new series. This is a special series. It's actually going to be a 52-week long series, and the first 14 classes are going to be foundational classes. Okay, so we're going to have classes from beginner through advanced classes, and this particular class is for everyone. This is not for just beginners or advanced, it's for everybody because it's a very foundational class. Everything is going to build upon these classes in the beginning, right? To make sure that you understand, right? The first thing you need to really understand is how do you read a credit report in a CRO way, right? Not in a way that the consumer sees it, not in an emotional way, but in a way that helps you set up everything for that client. Okay. We are going to distinguish tri-merges from single bureau reports and understand the difference between those two things and why it matters to us. We're going to go through and navigate every section of an actual credit report. We're going to look at trade lines, inquiries, public records. We're going to identify the data fields that matter for us and some of the ones that are sometimes confusing, date of last activity, date of first delinquency, those can be very confusing for people. So we're going to cover those as well so that everybody understands what they're looking at when they look at a credit report. We're going to understand more of how we look at it through our eyes and through compliance eyes for FCRA violations and things like that. We're not going to dive into any type of FCRA violations today, but this again is a foundational class for you so that we're going to set it up for the more advanced classes that come with FCRA, but we're going to start understanding just some concepts from the beginning. So we're going to also recognize the difference between a data error and the potential FCRA violation. That's a huge distinction and one that you'll be able to clearly understand hopefully after today. And we're going to have a lot of times for questions. I'm going to try to get through the slides as quickly as possible so we can ask questions. And I feel I'm going to share actual trade lines from credit reports, and we're going to go over those. So we may spend a little additional time in those because I'm pretty sure that's where the questions are going to start coming. So a tri-merge credit report and a single bureau credit report. A tri-merge credit report is data from all three bureaus, right? You have TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax on the report. So you can see them all side by side. So you can also see where all the discrepancies are between bureaus. That is not possible with a single bureau report, right? If you only have a single bureau report, you're only seeing one piece of the picture. It's especially important when you're talking about FCRA violations because you cannot see what's actually happening on only a single bureau report. So if I had, and we'll see some later, so if I have three bureaus and two are showing a zero balance and one is showing a balance, that's going to tell me right off the bat there is something wrong here, right? So that's a very possible violation of some sort. And that's the first key that I'm going to have when I see that. The first thing I'm going to be thinking. So what mortgage writers and underwriters or mortgage underwriters and lenders are using tri-merges, right? They're using FICO 2, 4, and 5, and soon they're going to be using Vantage 4.0. But they always use a tri-merge credit report to pull from unless they're just doing a one bureau report. But you need to know the difference. On a tri-merge, you can also see mixed reporting. That's in one bureau, you can't really find these things. So it's going to show you same account, different data, like what we just talked about. Also, it's going to show you things like name variations and things like that, date of birth discrepancies, which you could never get off one report. Okay, it is definitely essential for violation triage and dispute strategy. You cannot create a proper dispute strategy for anyone unless you have a tri-merge credit report. So that's going to be one of the credit monitoring platforms, something like that. So you should always start with a tri-merge at intake because that way you see the entire picture. On a single bureau report, it's very incomplete, right? So if you get one annual credit report from a consumer and that's the only thing you're looking at, you're really not able to create an appropriate action plan only for that bureau, but not overall. for their entire picture. So again, they monitor typically on bureau on the credit monitoring platforms, but it's definitely, you cannot create strategies with one credit report. There's 4 sections of a credit report, and I know this may seem a little remedial to some of you right now, but we're going to get into the things, the reasons why we're going over all of this in depth like this. So number 1, you have personal information. You're going to have names, aliases, date of birth, social, current, former addresses, current and former employers, things like that. The account or trade line section, you're going to see every account that they have, right? Payment history, balance, credit limit, account status, date of last activity, subscriber codes. This is where 90% of the dispute violation work lives in the credit report. Going back to personal information for just a moment, one of the main things on personal information that you're looking for as a CRO is an incorrect name, names that do not match at all. Sometimes there's misspellings and sometimes there's just some maiden names and their new names, married names, and those are fine. There's really nothing wrong with that as long as they recognize the name. But if you have, say you have a name and you have John Smith and then you have Gary Johnson on the same report, those are just really off. These are the things we're looking for. And down the road, as we learn more about FCRA, we're going to find out that's a very possible mixed file, especially when seniors have a lot of mixed files. So you really have to pay attention to names, pay attention. Do you see junior? Do you see senior? Because those are high value cases for FCRA attorneys. Very high value cases. So you always want to keep your eye out for those types of things. So that's how you can best identify any type of mixed file, right? Any mismatches that are big mismatches. Number 3, you have public records, bankruptcies, Chapter 7, Chapter 13. You have accounts that could still be showing a balance after the discharge. These are one of the things we're looking for, things like this when we're looking at credit reports. So BK violations are definitely one of the most actionable FCRA cases. Inquiries. Hard inquiries is the 4th section of the credit report. Any inquiries, soft, hard, whatever. They're only there for 2 years. So when you have inquiries, they only stay on the credit report, number 1, for 2 years, and they only affect the credit score for 12 months. All right, so I really don't do anything with inquiries. Now, if you're trying to get funding, this is a different picture. You may be working on the inquiries. I leave them alone. I don't do a lot of funding. So if they're in a 6-month credit program with me and I tell them not to get any new inquiries and 12 months don't matter, right? 12 months are gone. So at the end, they have maybe 6 months. They're just aging out a few inquiries and they're just not even going to have any that are affecting them for the most part. So I don't do a lot of focus there. So trade lines. This is the only one we're going to go over in detail of the 4 parts. The other parts are a little more self-explanatory. This requires a lot of talking about so that you understand what you're actually looking at. Number 1, account name and number. These are just what it says. The who owns the account and the number that's associated with it. It should match. Date opened. This definitely affects the length of credit history on a credit report. So you do want to pay attention to this date because you can dispute it if it's incorrect. So the date open would be like, if it's like capital 1, what date did that credit actually open? And it can be different for a collection agency. The date open can be the date they actually picked up the collection and they're reporting it. So those can differ. Credit limit, original loan amount. Obviously, this is super critical for utilization calculation. So we have to make sure that they're reporting correctly. There are some credit cards that have a tendency to not report the credit limits, and it can throw people's utilization off. So you need to be paying attention to that. Make sure that the credit limits are reporting correctly. Make sure that the credit limits are correct. Because sometimes I've talked to clients before and they'll say, well, it shows on the credit report you have a $1,400 limit. And they tell me, oh no, that was raised to 4,000. And I just got that. So you can send in a dispute for that too. Current balance, this definitely has to reflect the actual balance of that trade line. So if it's off, it's fine. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. What happens is if it's off by a few dollars, but it should reflect the actual balance. Zero balance on a charge off is a very common issue. It's got to show paid, right? So if it just says charge off and it's got the zero balance but doesn't show as a paid charge off, those are little things that you can be looking for just incorrect data. Account type, revolving, installment, mortgage, all of these you should be able to identify. You should understand what a revolving account is. A revolving account is something that you are able to charge on it, pay, and use it again, right? There's a credit limit and it's a revolving line. So department store cards, Visa, MasterCards, all of that type of thing are all revolving. Installment accounts, things like your car loans. These are a set payment for a certain amount of time. Installment loans are auto loans, student loans, things like that. And then you have mortgage, which is a type of installment, but it really has its own category. But it is an installment. So you for sure need to be able to identify those types of accounts because how you deal with them when we get into credit action plans and things like that are very different. So if you don't understand it from the get-go, what you're looking at on the credit report, it's very difficult to create plans for people. And that's what we're setting up here. We just want to make sure that you're able to create a plan, find violations and things like that as you look through someone's credit report. You should be able to sit down. By the end of this 52 weeks, I can promise you, if you come to all the classes in this series, you will be able to sit down with the credit report and within 5 minutes, create a plan all by yourself. Just looking through it, you'll be able to just get it done, right? Immediately. And it shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes to run through it. I can easily create a plan on a credit report in 5 minutes. And most people that have been in the space for a good amount of time can do that. And that's what we want to get you to. That's the goal. So payment status, 30, 60, 90, 120s. We just need to understand those. Payment history grid. This is the month-to-month record, and we're looking at these records, right? We're definitely going through and we're seeing are the 30-day lates all reporting in March, or is there one reporting in December, one reporting in March? Just looking for inaccuracies and things like that. Date of last activity. This is where it gets confusing for people. So the date of last activity can actually get updated anytime they report. And I think I made a mistake when I said date opened has to be the same, but date of last activity. So say a collection agency bought the account, or they can, every time they update it, they could update the date of last activity if they wanted to. It's perfectly okay. So sometimes you'll see that we're going to look at some examples here in a minute. Now, the 7-year clock, this is where people get confused. The 7-year clock runs from the date of first delinquency, not the date of last activity. And I'll show you the difference. So the date of last activity is usually the last time a payment was actually made, it occurred on the account. And then the date of first delinquency is the first 30-day late of the event that led to the derogatory charge off. And we'll go through that a little bit more too. Dispute and remark codes. This just shows different dispute history. Was it disputed, in dispute, that kind of thing. And the subscriber codes, which we won't really get into too much today. I think the biggest thing to understand in this part is how you decide when the 7-year clock starts. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what does the consumer see when they look at the credit report, and what do you see when you look at the credit report? So the consumer is going to see Oh, I have collection accounts. It's going to be very emotional for them, right? This is their credit report, so everything is emotional for the customer. They see, I have a collection account, but the CRO is going to see something very different. We're going to be looking at what's going on with that collection account. When did it last report? Can I do a pay for delete on this? Is anything inaccurate? We're looking for all sorts of different things when we see, oh, I have a collection account, right? How old is this collection? How new is the collection? Is this going to hurt my chances to get approved for a mortgage? Is it within the last 24 months? Is it 6 years old? We're just going to be seeing a whole different thing when we see I have a collection, right? My score is 612. Now, that's what the consumer sees. They see a score of 612. They don't know anything about that score, right? They just see they have a score of 612. They don't know where it comes from. They don't understand that's a Vantage score. They don't understand if that's a FICO score. They don't understand how to optimize for it. So when we look at a credit report, when we see a score of 612, here's the things we should be thinking. What is their goal to buy a house? Because if their goal is to purchase a home, they have a 612 score, they're not going to get the greatest rates, right? It's just not going to be that great. And we also know, well, this also is a Vantage score. It's not FICO 2, 4, and 5. So how am I going to optimize for that, right? So if I'm looking at that and I say, oh, 612, and I see a late payment 3 months ago, and I'm looking at a Vantage score, I know immediately as a CRO, I know, whoa, his score is way less on FICO 2, 4, and 5, right? It's going to be much lower than 612 because they factor in that late way more harshly than Vantage does. So again, in upcoming classes, we're going to cover all of these little nuances like that so that you can be able to do that too. But these are the things we should be thinking about when we're looking at this. The consumer it says I was late in March. Is March correct? Is it showing one in March and two in February? If we're going to ask the consumer some questions and we're just going to find out what's going on there. I paid this off. Why is it still there? These are huge questions for us, especially as if we're doing compliance like FCRA violations and they say, oh, I paid this. So what are we thinking immediately? Oh, whoa, I love that. If I hear something like that, I'm like, woo, great. I've got an FCRA violation, possibly, right? Because now I'm going to have to ask some questions. So if they say, I paid this off, why is it still there? Now it could be a zero balance, right? And they could just be asked, they just get confused. It could just be a zero balance and it's a charge off and it is going to stay there. It's not going to come off. Or it could be, I paid this off and there's a balance showing. So me as a CRO, I'm going to look immediately. Is there a balance? Is there not a balance? If there is a balance, I'm going to say, oh, when did you pay this off? They tell me, well, I paid this off 6 months ago. I said, well, can you send me a payment receipt? Can you send me the settled in full letter or payment receipt, anything that you have? Now, sometimes they're going to be like, sure, absolutely, I have it right here. And they send it right over. That's great. Now we know we have a violation immediately. It's all part of your intake process. And then if they say, no, I don't have anything, I can't, I say, can you find it? No, then maybe they didn't really pay it off. You always know. You're just going to follow up and get the evidence. You're always getting evidence. The customer, I don't recognize this account. Immediately, what are we thinking? Oh my gosh, this is a possible fraud or mixed file, right? And so we're going to dive in a little bit deeper there. So there's just a big shift on how we view a credit report and how a consumer sees the credit report. But we have to be able to identify the things they're telling us, right? It says charged off. What does that mean? We need to be able to tell them what that means, right? Charge off just is just an accounting term, basically. It doesn't mean you don't still owe the debt. So we're just going to give them that type of information. So we have touched on this a little bit already, data errors versus potential violations in the credit report. So I'm going to call these dispute track or attorney triage track. So one of these, you're always going to figure out which track anything goes to. It could be a don't touch it track, right? That's how I do when I go through and I look at my credit reports. Maybe I'm not going to touch it. Maybe it's a late payment from 6 years ago. It's really not hurting anything. I'm just going to leave it alone, especially if they're going to get a mortgage. I don't want to put in dispute all over their credit report because they don't like that. So maybe we have a leave it alone track. Then we have a dispute track where we know there's an actual error, like the examples here. One bureau shows 1,020 and another shows 1,050. That is technically inaccurate, right? It is a violation, technically. Obviously, no attorney's going to take this, right? This is where I think some people get confused. There's no material harm caused because a $30 difference in a balance is being reported. But you can dispute this, right? It is disputable. So, or an account open in 2019 showing as 2020. Again, it is a data inconsistency, but you can't tie this to damages. So it is not, so this is a dispute track, but you're not actually going to be able to send this to an attorney unless we have damages of some sort. Name spelling variations, old address differences, just like little things. They're inaccurate, but if you can't prove some type of harm or damages, it's not going to be eligible for attorneys. That's where we need to see the difference. Think about it. Is this causing some type of financial harm to the client? Now, when you're on the attorney triage track, you have a re-reported item that was previously deleted after a dispute. There's a lot more examples than I have here, but we're just going to go over a few of the bigger ones. So this I've had happen to me. We got something deleted. We actually did a settlement. It was deleted off the credit report, stayed off for a month. The following month, it came back on to one bureau with a balance. That's absolutely a violation. BK, a discharged account still showing a balance owed. So if that should have been included in the bankruptcy and it has a balance still reporting, that's absolutely on the attorney triage track, right? A balance reporting after a payoff. You're going to put that on the attorney triage track. So late payments reported during a CARES Act accommodation. That ranges anywhere from March of 2020 all the way up to, I think, end of September of 2024. Because not only did you have the 3 years, it was actually had the COVID deferment period, they also gave you another year on-ramp period of another year where nobody was supposed to report any actual late payments. We see these all the time. We get a lot of these, especially in Credit Butterfly. It picks it up for you. And we see a lot of these. I just went into the attorney on Sunday, as a matter of fact, and it was accepted. And it was during the on-ramp period. It had lates reporting in the on-ramp. So we will go really deep on this subject in class 14. It's going to be a much more advanced class that's coming up. But the first 14 classes are foundation classes. All right, so we're going to start looking at these. So I have 3 different examples here, and I want you guys to participate in this and take a look. What kind of report is this? Who can tell me? And you're going to have to talk because I'm on my own here today and I can't actually see the chat right now.
Yeah, this report is for a broker.
Is it a tri-merge or a single bureau report?
What is not a single? No, because you can see Experian in Equifax.
So this is a trick question because it's neither. It's a trick question, and you can tell by this. So this is a mortgage report. I did hear you guys saying it was a mortgage report. That's absolutely correct. It is not a tri-merge. It's only showing 2 bureaus. Do you see that? So we only have Experian and Equifax.
I would guess it's a soft pull because that's how a lot of times they're doing soft pulls right now because it costs them less money if they don't pull.
Yeah, exactly. So this may have been a soft pull. I'd have to go back and look at it. It's a pretty fresh one. So I'll tell you right now, lenders, they do not want to be pulling credit reports until they actually have to because it's $130 now per tri-merge credit report. Crazy pricing. When I stopped doing mortgages 2 years ago, it was $75. That's insane. And it used to be about $32 or $34. It's just a little bit crazy out there in the mortgage world. All right. So you need to be able to read all sorts of different credit reports because your clients will send you different ones. And especially if you work with lenders, you need to be able to read a lender tri-merge report, your smart credit or my free score now or identity IQ or my score IQ. You have to understand what those reports are telling you. So, and you guys can just shout it out. So here, what is this piece right here? Can you guys see my little thing I'm moving around or no?
No.
So it's probably easier for me to just talk then. So JP Morgan Chase card and then the number under it, that's just the name of the furniture, right? And then the account number. That's what you're looking at. So on these types of reports, you have your date opened, right? So this would be the date that JP Morgan Chase, where you actually opened this account with JP Morgan Chase. Reported, this is the last time they reported the account. High credit is the maximum amount they ever had charged on this card.
Caleb is her new boyfriend.
Just trying to mute people. Credit limit was 10,500, right? So we know that went over when it charged off likely. Reviewed for 57 months. It's going to give you past due. What is the monthly payment? What is the balance on it currently? We know this is a charge off. It's reporting on Experian and Equifax. That's how you tell. Like, see, some are only reporting on Equifax on here. So Experian and Equifax, and it's going to tell you the late payments. These are what they look like. So on a lender report, you're going to see 30-day late, 60-day late, and 90-day late. It's 4 of them. And that makes sense because it charged off. So it just went 90, 90, 90 until it charged off. And it's going to tell you the last late date, which is 4/22. All right. So that's a lender report. Collections will give you the original creditor, like US Bank here, factoring company. Does anybody have any questions on this? ECOA means who is it reporting to? So if this is a tri-merge for 2 different people, and that happens a lot, you'll get 2 different people. They're a little harder to read because you have to understand who's the borrower and who's the co-borrower. So this B means borrower, J means joint. There is no co-borrower on this, so this is just letting you know that there's joint accounts, that it's an actual joint account, not just a borrower account. Here is another type of credit report. It's from one of the monitoring companies, and this is how they report. I put this one on here because this has some things for us to review here, like date of last active and date of last payment. So these are different. So if you have date of last payment, these are different. See that? Not a lot different, but they're showing up a little different. One's saying March, one is saying April. Date last active, these could actually be different, right? If they reported them at different times, these are pretty close and they're all reporting same balances. So these are the types of things that we're looking for. The date opened, 2015, right? So we want to know, there's a couple things we want to know. So when we're looking, say something is old. So say this looks old, right? Date of last payment is 3/13 of 2019, which means what? Somebody tell me what that means to you.
Can you ask that question again?
The date of last payment. So if you looked at this particular trade line, Capital One, and you were looking at your client's credit report and you're helping them figure out a good plan for them, and you see the date of last payment on a charged off account as 3/13/2019, what is this telling you?
That's the last day that they can go by. I forgot what I'm trying to say, but the 7 years start at that date, right? For the debt to be deleted off the report. Would you start from that date?
So that's what we're trying to get to, right? So date of last payment does not start the 7 years. Date of first delinquency does. That's where it gets confusing because your date of last payment is the last time a payment actually got made, right? On 3/13. So the following month would be the date of first delinquency, which would show up at the first 30-day late, right? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Because it's confusing, and that is a confusing concept.
Sorry, would you be able to repeat that one more time?
So date of last activity or date of last payment, but you can tell from that, right? You could date of last payment is going to tell us when it's coming off. So what is this telling us? And anybody can just shout it out. What is this telling me is about
It's
this
inaccurate.
file? What am I going to
It's
do with it?
It's completely inaccurate and you need to dispute. You have so many problems already. If this says identity EQ, usually I use it Experian as Equifax directly. I can find more issues, but already there is so many problems.
Right, but what it is telling me is that it's the 7 years is already up,
Correct. I was just going to say that. Yep.
right? That's what it's really truly telling me. So what it's really telling me is that this is not on a dispute track. This is an FCRA triage track, right? Because now I see, oh, that's an absolute violation. So if this is showing up to me right now today when I pull it at on 424, and this is showing here, I'm going to be like, oh, great. I love that, right? Because I know this is an FCRA violation. I'm going to go ahead and dispute it as outdated, and then I'm going to forward it right to the attorney if they don't remove it. So that's why every trade line is always telling you something. It's telling you exactly what to do with it, right? It's telling you, am I going to dispute it? Is this going to turn into a possible CRA violation? Every single thing has its own story. And that's why you should always do an intake as well with your clients, because there may be more to the story than you even know, right? They may turn around and tell you, not only is that wrong, but they have their payoff letter from 3 years ago. It could be all sorts of things. So that's why we look at them.
Would you dispute after 313, or would you wait until April to go ahead and dispute it as outdated?
So for me, if I looked at this today
Mhm.
and it said 313 for the date of last payment, so I know I would dispute it right now. I would make sure it was past that date. Good leap. So here's another one. So this is another reason. This is just a reason why you always work off of tri-merge credit reports and not single reports. So this one here, as we can see, the balance is 0 and 49,000. This is an actual FCRA violation that I just turned in for somebody on Sunday too. That is an actual violation because he paid his house off. He sold his house, had a solar loan with Goodleap, and it got transferred. He has all of the paperwork, all of the documentation, and Experian still reporting it. I disputed it twice too. Guy's got like an 800 credit score. This is an FCRA violation. And the reason for that, and again, we're not going to go deep into it, but it's because that's damages, right? That's going to create damages for him because if he goes to get another mortgage right now, he has to actually factor this $49,000 into his DTI. So that would actually cause him harm. So that's why it's an FCRA violation, not just an error. One good thing or way to think about it is things with balances that shouldn't be there, they're going to affect their borrowing power is another good way to look at it when you're thinking about FCRA violations. So the key things that I really want you to take away from this class, and I know it's a little more remedial for some, but this sets up everything for every class we have coming after this. And if you don't master this piece of it, it's very difficult to master the rest. Always start with a tri-merge credit report. You cannot figure out exactly what's going on in anybody's credit report with only a single bureau. You will be in the dark on some. Sometimes people, they do that. They send me a report. I'm like, you know what? I just can't do one report because what if your Experian has like 5 collections that aren't showing on anything else? So you have to get the full picture, which is a great way to sell your credit monitoring, right? Your My Free Score Now, your Smart Credit, your Identity IQ, your My Score IQ. That's where you want to sell that. And if you are dealing with lenders, I always say use My Score IQ. It is more expensive. If they're on a tight timeline, I would use My Score IQ especially if they're on a 90 to 120 day timeline, they have to be ready for a mortgage because you at least get one mortgage score on that and you can see where they're actually at. That's going to be a huge help for you if you're working with lenders. If you're not and it's not on a tight timeline, to go with the less expensive options. But again, anybody that's looking for a mortgage, I'm putting them into my score IQ. Here, the trade line area is where most everything happens on a credit report. You have to master that piece. That's why we spent all that time just on that piece to understand what is reporting, what those dates mean, because that's where you're going to figure out all of your violations and whether or not you have just a dispute or whether you have an actual violation. Number 3, we're reading reports as legal documents, right? That is what we want to be able to do. We want to see if it's disputable or a potential violation. Every single time you do a credit evaluation with your clients, my suggestion is you start writing things down on a credit report. Sometimes when I first did this, a lot of what I would do, I would print the credit reports out or I would use my Surface Pro and I would actually write on them as I went along. So now we have more advanced tools these days. Sometimes we can create action plans and softwares and things like that, but you still should understand how to do this by hand. You need to be able to print off a credit report and go through it with a pen and identify the issues. Identify, am I disputing this or would this be something that I'm going to dispute differently because it's going to an attorney track? When you start doing that, you'll learn more and more each time because you'll get confused. You'll get stuck. You'll be like, oh, I'm not sure what to do with this. Then you can ask. Then you can come into these classes. You can ask those questions and get those answers. That's what this is all about, is that to teach you the right way of doing this to get the best possible result for your client every single time. So the difference between errors and violations is money. That's the difference, right? Violations are going to make you money, period. You're going to make $400 to $500 a pop on any violation that you have. And trust me, you all have, if you have a good amount of clients, you're going to have violations. And the clients love it. You'll get a lot more referrals too. So again, during this 52 weeks, we're going to be going back and forth. This is for everyone, but we will have some that are for just beginners. We'll have some advanced ones. But as we go through the 52 weeks, everybody will be getting more and more advanced. We have outdated accounts to the attorneys all the time. So if it's outdated, then you send it over to the attorney.
Okay.
And if they don't, after you dispute it, and then the attorney litigates and everybody gets paid.
Okay. Yeah, that was my key.
Yeah. So it's really just a matter of being able to identify. Everyone has these discrepancies in credit reports, right? Everybody does. You're going to have violations in your client's credit reports. Not every client is going to have them, but if you have a good amount of clients, you are going to have FCRA violations. You just have to be able to identify them when you see them.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
And you make a lot more money. You get paid. This is Shura. I'll see everybody next Friday. Have a great night. Have a good weekend.
Great training.
Thank you. Bye-bye.